And we're back like we never left. Welcome to the second episode of the day of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. This time we're in the car, but I want to thank you all for spending some of your Tuesday afternoon here with me in New York. And once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today is Arnold Schwarzenegger's 77th birthday. He's a little over a year younger than his, for many years, frenemy and now BFF Sylvester Stallone, who is 78 at present. But Arnold, 77, moved to America. I'm pretty sure he was still a teenager. He was humongous. But I think he moved here when he was 19, pretty sure. And he didn't go to Joe Weider's. There's like an idea Weider kind of put out there back in the day that, I found him, and it's not really what happened. Arnold came over here, and I think that he went to see Vince Gironda first. Vince Gironda ended up training Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed himself, many years later. Gironda was an unusual guy, a bit of an attitude, kind of cranky. And he supposedly told Arnold off when they first met. He wasn't impressed because Arnold wasn't really in that great of shape. He was humongous, but he didn't quite have the shape at that time. And I think that's how Arnold ended up getting with Weider. But I guess he was told that Gironda was the man to see, that he was the best trainer out there in the Los Angeles, Venice Beach kind of area. And then obviously Arnold met Joe Gold, and he was on his way. He was already on his way to kind of bodybuilding glory once he was able to get out of Austria. And it is, I don't want to say a cliche, but it is a true part and a unfortunate and very sad part of Arnold Schwarzenegger's younger life, that he was born post World War II era. If he'd been born in America, he would be called a boomer, being born in 47. Same with Sly, 1946, the first year of the baby boom. But unfortunately, Arnold's father had fought with the wrong side in the war, so to speak. And he was one of many, not just Germans, many Austrians who returned home broken. Whether it was from their experiences, whether it was from the horror of what they had taken part in, knowing what Germany had done, nobody knows. But Arnold's father was not good. He did not treat Arnold well, and he treated Arnold's brother Meinhard even worse. Meinhard, I think he committed suicide sometime in, is it the early mid-50s? I'm not exactly sure when. But Arnold's brother is a tragic figure. And these kinds of terrible events probably helped to spur young Arnold's fertile imagination. And he had such lofty goals that he set for himself. And regardless of the number of mistakes and missteps and scandals, if you will, that he kind of went through at various points of his professional and personal life, the idea of setting goals which appear to be absurd and unreachable, well, they seemed unreachable to everyone but him. And I don't for one second think that he believed he was blowing smoke up his own butt. I think he always felt that there was greatness in him, that he was not like everyone else. And this is a cliche. He wanted to make his life in America. He loved the country, and he was able to come over here at a, I guess you could say it was a turbulent time in this country. I mean, Vietnam War was going when Arnold got here. But he came here at 19. He wanted to not forget where he had been and who he was. He maintained a close relationship with his mother until she passed. But he wanted to establish himself. He didn't want to be defined as a child who grew up in the shadow of the horror of World War II. He wanted to kind of carve his own path and his own identity, but at the same time, he didn't run from his past. He didn't change his name. But he learned English very quickly. He picked it up really fast, and people who were kind of on the ground and knew him in the days, let's say the first year or so that he was here, they marveled at how quick he picked up not only the nuances of the English language, but he was so sharp. He was making jokes in English not long after he got here. Now you could say, well, maybe he did it phonetically. I don't know. But he was somebody who was always a quick study and always willing to go all out and not want to leave any stone unturned. And it's something that followed him for his entire, and has followed him for his entire adult life. He is somebody who is always going to his goal. He may not say it this way, certainly not now. He may not say, I'm always going to outwork somebody, but that was kind of his personality. He set goals. He believed he could achieve them, and he was going to try by any means necessary. And it didn't matter if he ruffled feathers. And there were moments in the movie business where there were certain actions he took later in his career, and by later meaning after he was an established star, where it's the kind of stuff that if it happened now, he probably would have been painted in a worse light. But information didn't travel that fast in the mostly, and in some cases 100% pre-internet era. And there are things that certain people in Hollywood did, and I don't mean illegal. I'm not talking Harvey Weinstein or Cosby or anything like that. I'm saying there are certain protocols that even big stars are not supposed to breach. But Arnold was willing to risk that and kind of go over the heads of certain people if it meant the film would have a better chance for success. If it meant, I'm going to speak up, and I understand I'm not supposed to directly communicate with the head of production of Columbia, but I don't give a shit. Because it's about the movie. It's about putting the best product. It's about getting as many people into seats as we can. As a younger person, it would have been, who do I need to talk to? What are my weak points? Do you think that I would have won this show if I had worked my calves a little differently? If there was a different peak? If I flexed differently? Whatever it was. He was not someone who was going to just assume one way or the other. He asked a lot of questions, and, he went to night school when he was here, even before he really got into the movie business. And he was just somebody who, he just had magic, natural charisma. And it isn't something that you would have expected. If someone had asked, here's a kid, he comes over here and he's bodybuilding, say, he wants to get into the movie business. Well, what do you think? The average person would say, well, he certainly has he's got an interesting look. I mean, he's humongous. He's got a nice smile. The accent is funny, whatever it might be. But nobody could have ever predicted what he would be able to do as the 1970s unfolded. He started winning Mr. Olympias. He won 1970 through 1975. No one would have predicted the successes and the way his career just very slowly gathered momentum as he worked with big people in the business, such as the filmmaker Bob Rafelson in Stay Hungry. He made the film with Jeff Bridges. And he worked with Kirk Douglas in The Villain in the late 70s. He had done Hercules in New York in the early 70s, but his accent at that time was so thick they actually dubbed him, which is insane, but that's what happened. But he left favorable impressions on almost all of the important people. And sometimes how you made people feel or whether they were comfortable in your presence. And he knew, as somebody who was so enormous, walking around at 260, whatever it was, he had to act a certain way or people were going to be intimidated, were going to be afraid. And he seemed to be the kind of personality who went out of his way to put people at ease, to make people laugh, doing impressions, doing jokes and accents and, things of that nature. So he may have, but he certainly was the only person who believed that he was going to go way beyond kind of silly supporting roles, although Stay Hungry was not a silly supporting role, and he did win a Golden Globe for Best Newcomer. So there were people already taking notice. I think this big guy, he's got something here. The movie that he did with Kirk Douglas was really not that good. But Michael Douglas, liked him. And Michael Douglas had it in his head already, I think this guy is going places. And then more than 15 years later, they were going to star in what became Face Off. And, you know, there's another version of the Matrix out there, another version of the multiverse, where it never got to John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, and it was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Douglas with the same script. And I mean, it's completely insane to even ponder, because Cage and Travolta were amazing in that. But I don't know, I kind of like to see how Arnold and Michael Douglas would have handled that. When Netflix did they did a 3-part documentary, which I saw, and I know some of you have seen it. It's really good. If you haven't and you get Netflix, it is worth it. What I liked about it, as painful as it was, and you know, certainly Arnold has made his share of enemies, various things. I mean, anytime you're a politician, right? He was the governor of California for, was it 7 years, 8 years? But he didn't have any editorial control over the project. And he did consent to sit for it. And most of the truth is, there's a lot of laughing, and he's having fun telling certain stories, particularly in the first 2 parts. It's 3 parts. More or less, athlete, actor, American. Or if you prefer, athlete, actor, statesman. It doesn't really matter. But most of the kind of controversial, scandalous stuff does not come when he was the bodybuilding champion, the biggest star in the world, from, you know, biggest movie star in the world. Most of the scandals and controversies are later. Let's say starting in the 90s, when his movie career slowed down, when he had some health issues. He doesn't shy away from it. He is open and honest. And it is difficult to see that your heroes sometimes have what we call feet of clay, that they're very human, and sometimes have taken actions and made mistakes that we like to think, well, I wouldn't have done that. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't have. But the way he kind of lays himself bare in the documentary, it's humbling. It's bracing. And on the one hand, you can say, well, I don't respect this, or this was terrible. But I am, I guess, at heart, a sort of forgiving personality. And I don't think any less of him knowing some of the stuff that happened. It is a life in full. And he was 75 going on 76 when they shot, you know, the footage of him just sitting for an interview, basically. A lot of interviews, but that's the idea. But I'm not the sort of individual who would judge a person's entire life on one scandal. Now, if the scandal is murder, that's different. If the scandal is sexual assault, different. But his scandals, though bad, they were bad within the normal parameters of unfaithful husband, trying to pull a scam on your wife, and pretending that a child you know is yours isn't yours. That's not something that we can just pretend didn't happen. But even with that, with the fact that he fathered a child outside of his marriage, even with that, he has been present in Joseph, the other son. He has been present in his life, and he has done his best to try to make Joseph feel as if he is part of the family. Not just that, well, I'm your father, but from what I understand, Joseph is close with, I think, 2 of the siblings, but not all of them. And that's just life. Sometimes things are going to happen, and you're still going to get along with these people, and someone else, it's going to be a little bit frosty, and you won't interact with them. But you can, at least I can, respect how he handled the fallout from his actions, which were inexcusable at the time. There's no scenario in which you can say, okay, well, this is fine. No, it wasn't fine. It was bad. It was really bad. But when you are accountable, and we all know this, when you put it on your shoulders and say, I did this, I made this mess, and, well, he's not going to clean it up, but I'm going to be as responsible about what I have done, the mistakes that I've made, as I possibly can. And that's what comes across in the documentary. He's not asking for forgiveness. He simply explains, this is what happened, and this is where I am now. And I thought it was, and I love the Sly documentary, the Stallone documentary. And see, a guy talked about how they were frenemies and now they're buddies. Some of the most piercing insights of Sylvester Stallone in that documentary come from Arnold. And some of the best moments in the Arnold documentary come from Sly. Because sometimes it's people who, at a certain point, maybe were an antagonistic force, or at least a theoretical. So I never bought the idea that Arnold had a problem with Sly. It was the other way around. It was that Stallone was jealous of Arnold. He didn't like the fact that Arnold was working with these big filmmakers like James Cameron. Now, Sly, technically, he didn't really work with James Cameron. James Cameron wrote Rambo, First Blood Part 2. But Sly was jealous of Arnold's career path. That is true. And so they had this little one-upmanship, and mostly it was fun. They would make fun of each other within the context of a movie. Even Arnold in Twins, he sees a picture of Stallone looking jacked in Rambo, and he flexes. It's hilarious. And then even Sly with Demolition Man making fun of Arnold when it turns out that Arnold was president in the world of Demolition Man. He was president? Gold. And the number one moment that both guys, I'm sure, would agree on is the moment in Last Action Hero when the kid that Arnold Schwarzenegger is stuck with in the film, Danny Madigan, Arnold is playing a movie character called Jack Slater, doesn't realize he's a movie character. The kid's trying to prove to him, you're not really Jack Slater, you are a character in a movie. You're really an actor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm going to prove it to you. And they go into a Blockbuster. There aren't too many. There's only one of those left. They go into a Blockbuster, and the kid shows him Terminator 2, except in this version of the MCU multiverse, Terminator 2, the Terminator is played by Sylvester Stallone. And I guarantee you Stallone got a kick out of that. He fucking loved that. And I'm sure that's the kind of thing that would kind of get the thaw going, where we don't need to be even mildly antagonistic. We're in the same fucking business and we're almost as old as each other. So when I think of Arnold, I do think, first I think of the bodybuilding and the health. Then I think the movie career. And then if you want to say statesman, politician, just, I don't want to say TV character, although he has the TV show called Fubar, which I did enjoy. I thought it's not a great show. It's a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. And Arnold is funny as hell. It's really well cast. The kind of ex-wife on the show, perfect casting. Monica Barbaro, who was fantastic in Top Gun Maverick, she was great on the show. And I don't know when the second season is coming out. But my first thought of Arnold is the fitness angle. And I was a fan of his from the first time I saw Terminator on HBO. This guy is fucking great. And I think the next Arnold film I saw, I didn't see anything until Predator and then The Running Man. The Running Man, even more so than Predator, was a Gen X standard in the sense that because it was not R-rated, I think it was PG-13. HBO ran it all the time. I've seen The Running Man more than any Arnold movie. Not even close. I've probably seen The Running Man 30 times start to finish. There's no other Arnold movie I've even probably seen 15 times, as if that's a good thing, right? But I wasn't into fitness. I wanted to not look like him, even the older era. That was still beyond. But I wanted to be somebody who took his health and his fitness seriously. And he was an inspiration there. I knew I could never look like him. Again, 230, 240 at 5% body fat or whatever it was, just absolute freak. But I wanted to move in the direction of being healthier. And what I got out of Arnold is when he retired from bodybuilding, I'm sure he was still taking maintenance doses of test or whatever it was that he was on. But my perception of him was that he was living a healthier lifestyle overall, because I don't believe that. I know a lot of people who are on very low doses of test and other anabolics because, hey, even at my age, I could go to the doctor and I could get prescribed something, because you get older, the hormones are not exactly the same. Sometimes your test will drop, whatever it might be. I have a thyroid issue, but the last time my test levels were checked, I was, within range, normal, quote unquote. But he seemed to be the picture of health, even though he smoked cigars, which he wouldn't necessarily recommend to anybody, but he ate a cleaner diet. And people who knew him, and this is something that more than one person said, they said Arnold is not indifferent to really good food. It's not that he doesn't like rich food or a steak or mashed potatoes or chips or whatever it is. They said, but Arnold is not ruled by appetite. And that's something I would never have thought of, that kind of concept. But people who are disciplined, and because Arnold is older and he certainly doesn't look like Stallone, and Stallone at 78 is still pretty fucking diesel, and I'm sure if he pulled his shirt off, he still has abs. Hell, same with Harrison Ford, for crying out loud. Harrison's in his 80s now. But Arnold still takes this seriously. He works out every day, and even if his skin doesn't look the way it did even 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and his muscles, he still lives the lifestyle. And you're not going to look the same for your whole life. You want to try to maintain as much as possible and do as much as possible. It's like anything else. You're not going to be an A-list movie star forever. You're not going to be at the top of the Hollywood food chain forever. In the immortal words of Arnold's idol, his buddy Clint Eastwood, you improvise, you adapt, you overcome, you do something different. Just because Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't have six-pack abs at 215 pounds at age 77, it doesn't mean that he isn't in better shape than 99 out of the next 100 people in his age bracket. Not everybody can be Stallone. Like, Stallone is insane when it comes to that. I bet that Sly doesn't even eat 1,000 calories a day. He's so wired all the time. And I'm sure if Arnold feels like having a slice of cake, he's having a fucking slice of cake. Because you do reach a point where you can't deprive yourself all the time. Like, that doesn't work either. For some people, maybe Sly, maybe that's the only way he knows how to live now. Ever since Copland, Stallone has been shredded for the last 27 years, and he had been shredded for how many years before that, before putting on the weight for Copland. But in his case, gaining all that weight really fucked him up, and he's talked about it. It really fucked him up. But as far as Arnold, and if we just want to talk about his best movies, I mean, my Arnold, like, top 5 is probably not that much different than what most regular fans, doesn't even have to necessarily be fans of Arnold, not in any order: Total Recall, Predator, Terminator 2 for sure. That would be my top 3. I love the movie Twins. Man, he and DeVito were so good, even though the movie Junior sucked. I wish that they had, and they're still talking about doing a sequel to Twins. I guess it would be a legacy sequel. I could do it. But yeah, Terminator, Predator. Yeah, I'll just say Terminator, Terminator 2, Predator, Total Recall, and Twins. But having said that, I love The Running Man. I might even put The Running Man over the original Terminator. Terminator 2, it's kind of almost a remake of the original. You think about it? The only difference is that Arnold is basically playing the Kyle Reese character in the sequel, right? But yeah, I love The Running Man. And some of the other ones, Raw Deal was okay. Red Heat was okay. Commando, not a fan. Kindergarten Cop's fun, but it would not come anywhere near a top 5. Last Action Hero, I wish I could squeeze in the top 5. That's a movie that's grown on me. And True Lies is fantastic. In his case, and this is, I think, another thing that Stallone was jealous of, Sly made a reasonably high percentage of really terrible movies. And when you talk about Arnold's, like, major studio releases, I mean, Sly's got about 15 clunkers in there. Arnold doesn't have too many. I think Red Heat is super entertaining. Raw Deal's not great, but it's better than a lot of Stallone's kind of lesser efforts from the 80s and 90s. Arnold just had a really good eye for material. And the irony with that, with Sly, is that Stallone is a great writer. He's a great writer. But he has taken part in movies that just weren't good, and the scripts weren't there. I did an episode a week and a half ago on Get Carter, a guilty pleasure movie. I fucking love it. The script was a piece of shit. There aren't that many, if you look at just Arnold in the 80s and 90s, where you say, well, the problem is the script was terrible. I mean, even Eraser, script was okay. And If you want to say End of Days, the script was weak, all right. It was very obvious and on the nose, but that film is still super entertaining. And just to hear Arnold scream at Gabriel Byrne as the devil, you're a choir boy next to me, a fucking choir boy. Really, really good. Arnold was committed. He gave a good performance in End of Days, even though the film is not entirely successful. That's a 2-star, maybe 2.5. But it's very entertaining. Rod Steiger as a priest is a fucking scream. But he just hasn't made that many lousy movies. And the fact that he was always able to poke fun at himself, whether it was his accent or earlier roles, whatever it might be. And that's something that comes up and came up in the first season of Fubar. There are a lot of moments where lines of dialogue are deliberately supposed to remind the viewer of a different Arnold movie. And so just for example, there's a moment in the film where Arnold is talking about the kind of parent that he tried to be for his daughter. And he's being very sincere. And the setup of the story is that Arnold is a secret agent and so is the daughter, and neither knows that that's really what the other does for a living. So, and that's where you get the conflict and the family bonding. But Arnold is talking about different kinds of parenting, what he tried to do. And he goes, I did not want to be one of those chopper parents. Didn't want to be one of those chopper parents. Now, it's helicopter parents. Now, we know that, and everybody in the story knows that. But Arnold, because he's Arnold, he says chopper parents or chopper parents only because of the movie Predator 35 years prior, 35 plus, more like 36 years prior. Get to the chopper! That's it. That's the only reason why they even bring that up in the first place, is so people like me can crack up laughing at Arnold arguing it's not called helicopter parents, it's called chopper parents. Absolute gold. Gold. I hope that Arnold is able to do Twins 2 with DeVito. I mean, Danny DeVito, he'll do anything. He's fucking great. What a legend. I love Danny DeVito. How many great movies he was in supporting roles. I mean, 1997, he had 2. He could have been nominated for supporting actor for both of them. He's so good. The Rainmaker, where he plays Matt Damon's kind of immediate boss, because their actual boss has flown the coop. That's the Mickey Rourke character of Bruiser Stone. But he's really good as Deck in The Rainmaker, and he's amazing in LA Confidential. He played a lot of those great supporting roles. But Danny, he's ready to go. He could do Twins, the two of them. If there's a script, make a fucking movie. And that's the thing, when somebody gets to be in their mid to late 70s, you can't begrudge them if they just feel like they've had enough and don't want to deal with the grind of sitting in a makeup chair for 3 hours or whatever it might be, or acting opposite a green screen or a Muppet, like making jokes about Mark Hamill in Empire Strikes Back. 6 weeks of his life, he's acting opposite a Muppet, which isn't moving. It's easy. It's not really, it can't be that stimulating as a performer. But Arnold has lived one of the great lives of, late 20th and early 21st century. There are so few people who truly live the life they imagine and have the opportunity to actualize almost all of their dreams, their hopes. He did it. And he's the least surprised person. That's something that comes across in the documentary, because he talks about it, and because of what he was actually able to achieve, the pie in the sky stuff that he discusses from when he was a kid, the things he hoped to do, you're in awe. You say to yourself, he fucking did it. He said he was going to be a champion bodybuilder. He won the Mr. Olympia 7 times. He said he was going to be a big movie star. He way exceeded that. He once said he wanted to be president. Well, that wasn't going to happen, but he ended up being the governor of the biggest state in the country, at least if we go by population. What a life. What an extraordinary man in every possible way. And there's an old saying that says, great men are seldom good men. But I think Arnold Schwarzenegger at heart, I think he's a good man. He doesn't blame other people for his failures, for his scandals, for his controversies. He's willing to take the hit and say, this is on me. And That's another way of saying he's a real stand-up kind of a human being. At least that's how he comes across to me, not just in the documentary, but in general. He is somebody who comes across as eternally grateful for the kind of rewards that have come with the life that he has lived, and humble. And there's just life lessons all over the place that we can all take something from, whether it's following in his footsteps from the fitness and health perspective, or in some cases in a negative way, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Look at what happened. Look what he had to deal with. Look at the fallout of what took place after. Yeah, you know what? Because not all lessons are positive. They're not all, ooh, this is a great life lesson and heartwarming. Sometimes they're gutting. Sometimes they hurt. And he's done all of that and seemed to come out on the other side, where even people who you'd think would really be pissed off and angry at him and maybe not even have a relationship with him, still gets along with them. Arnold Schwarzenegger from Graz, Austria, born July 30th, 1947. Happy 77th birthday to a really extraordinary individual. This has been episode 260 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Tuesday afternoon here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, Amazon Music, or any of the others, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.